right, it's 6 o'clock, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. So I didn't get a printout of the agenda, but basically we're just gonna talk about broadband first and then about cannabis legislation. And Alderman Brandon Adams is the one who's done all the work. So let me go ahead and start off with the broadband discussion.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Committee Chair, and I sincerely thank every participant that traveled far to provide the information and insight. You're all industry leaders, and I thank you. Everyone here should value your expertise, and I hope the council will extend their gratitude as well. Thank you for coming. They say hindsight's 20/20. Thankfully, that's next year, not behind us. So let's be proactive instead of reactive. Each issue before us creates an entire market of economic opportunities when Jacksonville acts. These issues aren't if the council approves, only when do we. This council is nonpartisan. Both the issues in front of council are nonpartisan. Everybody needs affordable, reliable internet, and doctors and taverns don't discriminate, and neither do dispensaries. The JREDC, Jacksonville's Economic Development Plan, forwarded their economic development plan to the members of the committee this afternoon. Just listing a couple things that it says in here. The first thing on page 7, the very first thing, the goal. At this current time in West Central Illinois, several economic development organizations are undergoing planning and rebranding initiatives to identify the changing needs of their region to better position it for the future. And both of these are issues that we're going to be looking at in the future. It's not if we need broadband, it's when we need broadband. And the legislation will be coming regardless of whether we act on it now or not. Hi there. All right. Chris Stone, nice to meet you. Thank you. Just on the next page here in the economic development plan under strategies, it says right here for us, high-speed broadband. Numerous studies have shown that access to high-speed broadband serves as a catalyst for businesses and residential growth. And if you look at page 21, the prioritization of the regional plan objectives. Number 2, right here, work with local broadband providers to offer high-speed broadband capacity to residents and businesses in rural areas of the region. So that's what we're here to do, is to fulfill the guidelines by the JREDC. Also, as far as job growth, if you look at Morgan County, it's flatlined. Even Scott County had better growth than Morgan County has in the past decade, and that's after we took a nosedive from 2000 to 2010. And this is Sangamon County here and Illinois, both are doing better in job growth than Morgan County. As far as our agricultural center, it says right here on page 25, farm agriculture is the #1. So I've also invited the Department of Agriculture to speak. Jeff Cox from the Department of Agriculture was going to come tonight, but since this special study is over the recreational cannabis legislation, they were unable to attend due to conflict of interest, even if they were talking about specifically industrial hemp. So they would be more than happy to address the committee at a later date after the legislation is voted on.
We're gonna have Dan talk about broadband before you get into that.
But I was just finishing this up because these, on the economic study, these apply to both things. So you're looking at people who are wanting to come to the community, like the owners of a corporation, but are they gonna wanna relocate to a place that doesn't have internet service? I mean, I was at the library yesterday where Senator Tammy Duckworth's representatives came and spoke to the community, and one of the things that we need to look at is the grants as far as the capital expenditure. So that was my issue to her, and lo and behold, her staff couldn't even log on to the Wi-Fi at the library. So not only do we need to look at both of these as economic developments? We need to look at what direction we need to take Jacksonville. On page 29 here, they asked, when asked to suggest just one thing to change about the region, participants offered a variety of suggestions, including encourage more corporations and businesses to support and invest in the community. Incentivize a new business that can create 500 new good-paying jobs. Start a small business incubator. And then on the last page here, if you look at, and I'm gonna bring this up again because our I-72 corridor for data processing, hosting, and related services, I have WTF question mark, because we're $92,637 below the Illinois average for that job in this region, and that's unacceptable. The council convened last, and I spoke about joining Next Century Cities. Next Century Cities is here to help the community advance our broadband initiative, and this is their membership press flyer. I'd just like to read a few things from them to the committee as well. Next Century City supports mayors and community leaders across the country as they seek to ensure everyone has fast, affordable, and reliable internet access. Across the country, innovative municipalities recognize the importance of leveraging gigabit-level internet to attract new businesses and create jobs, improve healthcare and education, bolster civic participation, and connect residents to new opportunities. Next Century Cities is committed to celebrating communities' successes, demonstrating the value of next-generation broadband, and helping other cities work to realize the full power of truly high-speed, affordable, and accessible broadband. And the core principles that Next Century City that Jacksonville agreed to were believing there is no single pathway to a smart, effective approach. Next generation broadband, what matters is meaningful choice, dedicated leadership, and smart collaboration. All Next Century Cities members are committed to the following principles. High-speed internet is a necessary infrastructure. Fast, reliable, and affordable internet at globally competitive speeds is no longer optional. Residents, schools, libraries, and businesses require next-generation connectivity to succeed. The internet is nonpartisan because the internet is an essential resource for residents and businesses in all communities. The provision of fast, reliable, and affordable internet transcends partisanship. This collaboration welcomes leaders of all affiliations and beliefs who believe fast, reliable, and affordable high-speed internet access is essential to secure America's internet future. Communities must enjoy self-determination. Broadband solutions must align with the community needs. There is no perfect model that is universally appropriate. Towns and cities should have the right to consider all options, whether public, nonprofit, corporate, or some other hybrid, free from interference. High-speed internet is a community-wide endeavor. Building effective next-generation networks requires cooperation across communities. It is critical to involve and include multiple stakeholders and perspectives to succeed, including businesses, community organizations, residents, anchor institutions, and others. Everyone in a community should be able to access the internet on reasonable terms. Meaningful competition drives progress. A vibrant, diverse marketplace with transparency in offerings, pricings, and policies will spur innovation, increase investment, and lower prices. Communities, residents, and businesses should have a meaningful choice in providers. And lastly, collaboration benefits all. Innovative approaches to broadband deployment preserve diverse challenges and opportunities. To communities and regions, working together, cities can learn from their experience of others, lower cost, and make best use of next generation networks. And now I'd like to introduce to the council Dan Kennedy of i3 Broadband, second in the nation for fastest speeds at lowest prices and customer service, just behind Google. He's going to discuss connectivity and answer questions like fiber grants, incremental or immediate installation, opinion on the best path forward, and my issue, providing a reliable internet service to the low income and poor people like myself in public housing. I needed internet and I couldn't get it. And I'm trying to better my life, and without it, it's hard. I talked to IRTC, our local ISP, internet service provider, and surrounding ISPs. They offer 50 megabytes per second and 100 megabytes per second to residential for $50 and $100 a month. I'll start by asking Dan if 1,000 megabytes per second or 10,000 megabytes per second is gonna cost $1,000 or $10,000 a month.
No, but you only need one customer to do that, to pay for your bills. No.
Well, you can retire off of one customer, but what can you do for our community?
So it made, first of all, say thank you. It's
you.
been, since 2014, since I sat in this room, and
Oh, full disclosure, Dan was the author of the former broadband FTTH study that was done by TSI.
yeah, to put this kind of in context for you, I worked, in the past for a company called Fidelity Communications. Served rural areas, 5 states, family-owned business, telephone company, et cetera. As of 2 weeks ago, they sold for $526 million. So the family did well. Went on from there to the city of Highland. And the city of Highland built a fiber network. We started that program with them from scratch, which was building everything from business models, infrastructure, understanding each piece, to actually implementing it and making it work. And Mark Latham, I believe, will
Yes,
attend
I
the
was just
city
gonna add
council
to
meeting.
that. Yes, he'll be at the next city council meeting on the 28th. I spoke with him. He's the business manager of the broadband network in Highland, Illinois, and he was gonna discuss on how it's improved the economic opportunity in his area and didn't decrease the population, but increased it. So it'll be interesting to hear of how what Dan did for that community is represented in our council meeting next.
Sure, and what Mark will tell you is that a lot of the local city business in the area, et cetera, wanted a low-cost solution that was effective and stable. And so, the city kind of went down the endeavor, and you had all the naysayers of city government getting involved in the infrastructure, because a lot of them have failed, for various different reasons. This business is challenging. While I was at Fidelity, we kind of brought to bear the operational experience that we had, understanding how to purchase things, understanding how to market to consumers. You can't make every consumer happy. And so, living in the fishbowl that you do as city officials, it's very tough providing a service that is like that. It's not a standard utility. I know I gotta hook up power, I know I gotta, get my garbage, picked up from the city, et cetera. It's a much different animal. So, helping Mark and the city go through that was interesting, and it's turned out very well for the city of Highland. So they have a lot of retention because of it. They have an incubator program that helps build up business in their TIF areas. It's doing everything that they want to do, but it's a long-term strategy. It's one you have to really think about it in that aspect. That led to
Highland is the Next Century City member, as well as Champaign, Urbana, and now Jacksonville.
Right.
Those are the 4 in Illinois.
right.
Highland was also the first municipal internet service provider in Illinois.
Correct. So, having helped them, left and went on the private side and decided to go out. We were buying companies. My partners and I bought a company in Peoria called ITV3, renamed it i3 Broadband, and have been expanding it ever since we purchased it. We purchased the UC2B network from the city of Champaign. It was serving the underserved areas, about 5,000, So we continue to do that today and expand that network there. We serve a lot of smaller towns in and around Illinois. We also have operations on the East Coast. Ironically, in an area outside of Providence, Rhode Island, believe it or not, you can still go east from Providence and not hit the ocean. The demographic exactly the same as Illinois. Growing for the same reason, have the same pains, broadband issues, and we've upgraded that system to where they'll get 1 gigabit internet. We compete against Cox. They're offering gigabit internet for $79. We discount the service quite often to $44. We guarantee you the price for life. It's really simple. You don't have to worry about, we have done a price increase. The only thing we've had to do a price increase on is video, because we buy it from Disney and all those fun folks, and they always charge us more to send it down to consumers, which you guys all know, the TV and prices go up every year, but our internet prices do not. And we increase our speeds. We're gonna actually start offering 10 gig internet to the home.
Which is
So 10
how much
times,
faster than 100 megabytes per second?
I'll let you do the math, it's a lot.
100 times faster.
Exactly, yeah. It's the point is consumer devices are kind of driving the fact that this device, think about it. When they launched first rocket to the moon, this has more, horsepower than all those computers that did that. Our children will never know a device as dumb. This is it. So, and it's going so fast. So everything that we do is through this device, another peripheral device, an app on our TV, and depending on what TV you buy today. My children watch YouTube TV, which as a parent does not have parental controls, by the way, so you have to sit and watch it with them. I've never watched so much TV in my life, because there's no ratings on it, so you have to be careful. But it's growing, and consumers demand a quality product. They demand that when they pick up the phone, they need something taken care of, you take care of it immediately. So what you'll see, we even we get named by Comcast and Cox in their marketing. Okay, so they're billion-dollar companies, and everything they do, from all the media and the things that they own to the subscriber base. So we have, everybody's got a different little piece, but we tell them that nothing's slower.
Comcast is the largest internet service provider in the nation, correct?
They're right up there with Cox. I could check, but they're neck and neck with Charter, Spectrum, which they go by now. They're all pretty close. But we're a threat. We provide a low-cost service that's a very good quality, not just to residential, but business as well. We do bill comparison to business customers, and typically we've saved them 50% over Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, whoever it is the providers of. So we do a good job of it with good staff that we grow here in Illinois and also in Rhode Island. And that means a lot to our consumers. There are a lot of cities in Illinois that are trying to figure out how to take the next step. And we do that in different ways. We just met with the city of Springfield and the city of Chatham. We are working with actually the USDA right now to expand in rural towns between Champaign, Springfield, and Peoria, and everything in between.
And when I called you, you were just getting ready to talk to me, Berlin.
Correct.
And then you decided to come here after there was more support, since we turned down this initiative in 2018.
Right. It turned down is the way I would look at it is it's hard to get your mind around what it takes to do it. It's not just something in standard. You kind of get into the business and you throw up a gas station on the corner, people buy gas. It's not that simple. What we proposed here was the ability for the city to put in an infrastructure that ultimately, what Mark will tell you when he comes in here is that without the city of Highland having infrastructure there, Charter/Spectrum would still be charging almost double the cost of what they charge today. That's a fact. So, you know, how do you put that in the financials and a return on the city, saying this is what I did and here's all the great revenue? Well, that's taxpayers spending that dollar in town on something else. And so they got the economic benefit of it, and every meeting that we ever went to, is the same way. No different in Peoria.
And like Mark's scenario, that's the best scenario for the city, and it would have been revenue neutral in last year and earning the city money this year as a municipality,
That's correct.
but it's still sitting here.
Can I ask one question? I'm just curious.
Sure.
I'm reading and it says 1 gig internet for $44.99 a month
Mm-hmm.
for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it go to after that? Down here, hold on,
79.
79.
79?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I just wanna get on the facts.
No, you're fine, and we do different incentives. We're in, you know, today in this world, the optics of what you do is just as important of how you compete against major providers.
Yep.
Because they don't go to sleep. When we, as a matter of fact, when we first purchased this company, there were our competitors going out and telling customers that they were us and that they had to sign for contracts. Now, how they didn't understand it wasn't AT&T or a Comcast versus that, I don't know, but we had, it's interesting, we can cause a lot of disruption just from simply doing consumer
I'm gonna
choice.
ask a question, because what Aaron brings up there, is the customer paying you, or are you asking the city to pay you and charge the customer? Because you're making it sound like the city would create a utility.
So there's three
for the-
options.
Yes, I know, Brandon. Absolutely.
There are options, you get to choose, that's the whole point. There are ways that you can look at funding them. There's different segments of our company that operate really efficiently. One of the most efficient parts outside of, you know, customer service and putting the stuff in the ground, as cheap as we can. Because every dollar we earn, we put right back into the ground. The marketing side of this thing is just as good, the door to door and all the effectiveness of making this, you know, what a consumer will buy, you know. If you don't have effective marketing to a consumer at a good price, they're not gonna sign up. I don't care how good it is.
So you were talking about, you're expanding into Springfield and Chatham, are those municipal systems or just your own corporate system that you're putting in?
Springfield owns part of its own infrastructure.
Okay.
So we're talking to them about what they've had it for. I think you have to go, I apologize, for 86, somewhere around then, they started building their own infrastructure.
Like
So-
they have a brand or something?
Exactly, where they did SCADA and things of that nature, they wanna connect anchor institutions in certain pieces of that. So I think, they claim to have about 80 of those, you know, on that system. We're talking to them kind of all the above, you know, is it an underutilized asset? In most cases, a lot of city infrastructure is, because it's, you know, we are obviously using it for, you know, we're out here trying to get as many consumers on the system as possible, businesses otherwise. So we use that infrastructure very actively, that's our business. City says, well, I have SCADA systems, but the cost of putting in that infrastructure, whether it's aerial underground, whether you're putting in, if you guys understand the way it works, you're putting in fiber in the ground, and they are 12, 24 counts, you know, all the way up to 288 strand. Well, you need to do more. The point is, when you put it in, whether you're putting in 24 strands or 288, the price difference between doing that is negligible. And so a lot of people will put in a lot of infrastructure, and it's never used. Because guess what? This technology, we're doing things over the same strand of fiber that we never thought were possible. We're putting 100 gig over something that we couldn't do more than a gig, you know, 10 years ago. So now that all the infrastructure is there, one of the things that's interesting to us is if you've got that infrastructure, we can expand off of it really fast. And we can tie a lot of this infrastructure together, also make it redundant. You know, so if a Buick finds a pole over there, a backhoe digs it up over here, the city will not lose its, you know, communications infrastructure.
So if you came to Jacksonville, would it be a municipal system or would you come in and do your own?
It's your choice.
Okay, so like what are the different options are like, this, I guess, what are the different speeds?
That's what I was talking about.
It's a different,
Like in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna start doing this, are you talking like a couple years out or?
well, I can tell you, when we did the scenario with the city of Highland, that went to a referendum.
Okay,
And that was done on purpose, for a referendum. That took from start to finish to the referendum 3 years. Some cities just, we're doing it, okay? Put out an RFP, who I want my partners to be. We're gonna fund this, you're gonna do that, let's go. A lot of them, you qualify for a lot of grants. You have less than 20,000 people in this town. Underneath the rules, way they apply for the USDA and other pieces out there, there are tons of grants available to you. There are grants to the USDA for putting up a building that you put high-speed internet access into, have infrastructure. So if you wanted to be able to go there, work with the Lace and Grace machines that have the ability for people to write resumes, do whatever they want to do as a learning center, et cetera, there's dollars for you. It's the application process. Unbeknownst, to me, grant writing is actually a career for some people, so we're kind of going through that fun thing, learning that side of it. But there's tons of dollars out there. You just got to have the willpower to go through it, because as a government entity working with another government entity, you want to pay for it. But if you have the willpower to do it, there are dollars available to you. Ignoring the infrastructure, the infrastructure can be done in a lot of different ways. MediaCom's system today could be upgraded to provide a gig service. If there was an engineer in the room, he or she would argue with me on when, where, and how, and dollars, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, infrastructure here will do it. MediaCom has to spend their dollar wisely where they go. So the pecking order in which they upgrade their system is their business. Trying to get them to do it for the business needs of this community, they may not see it, it may be a rounding error, and they don't get it. So what a lot of cities are looking at is purely, how do I improve the quality of life by putting an infrastructure in that is sticky to my community, my business, and allows me to stabilize what I'm doing and grow. And you can do that by putting infrastructure in place, but you also have to, depending on what gaps, for digital inclusion and things of that nature, you've got to get devices in people's hands so that you can tie them into the infrastructure that, or at least the services the city offers. City of Champaign saw that. They saw the gap, and they had a low-income area that could not get to basically city infrastructure that was there for them, whether it was, fill out this application and you'll be subsidized on different things, whatever they may be. Consumers didn't have a device to do it, nor did they know how to get there. Simply going to the library wasn't, easy enough to fill that gap. So in that case, John Gant and those folks wrote a grant to the NTIA and got $33-ish million to put that infrastructure in place. But it only had one focus. We brought the other part of the focus, which is there's got to be profitability associated with this to pay for more infrastructure. And so that's where our partnership comes in place with the city of Champaign and UCDB specifically. And that works well, but there's a balance. Even our company, we have to pick and choose where we go, and we have to find ways to do that. But a reason that a lot of cities want to partner with us is because we do what we say we're doing. We provide a quality service. We make sure consumers get what they need, make sure business customers are happy, small business, et cetera. We can serve enterprise, large business customers, and we do that very well.
I'd just like to add to that, this was done
Sorry.
January 2014, and the internet service providers pushed back at that time on how they were going to take care of Jacksonville, and now we're sitting here in 2019 because they didn't do what they said they were going to do
Yeah,
for Jacksonville.
we encourage the city also, the co-op that's just south of here. They were looking at, co-ops have the same fundamental issues that cities do. The more rural you get, same as rural telephones, people are leaving, less ratepayers on your system. So they're actually looking at, we're doing infrastructure, and it was logical for them to kind of step this direction to help, and I'm assuming nothing came of that, obviously. But, there's different ways to do it. But in the case of City of Highland, they had champions within that, said, all right, we're gonna do this, we're just gotta figure it out. It's something that we truly need, and we know that we will cut our consumer prices for products and services 30–40%. That's what happened. They're very, very happy because of all the other, add-ons that come from that. And so, Mark can certainly go through all the changes and all the things that it did for the city, and tell you, good, bad, and ugly, all the way through. And so I recommend that you come up and talk to you, because you can see that. You can also look outwardly at joint partnerships that happen.
You say there's different proposals, is that all in there? I mean, if you came in as a corporate, what do you need from the city? If you do this on your own, what do you need from the city?
You can, if we did this scenario, we can look at, if the city wants to pay for part of the infrastructure, we can look at that scenario. That's the fastest way to get a provider here, period. If the city has the means or the ability, and obviously there's different ways to do it, depending on the type of bonds or things, if you went that route, there's a lot of different ways to do it. But ultimately, each city today are going out and where they are choosing to pitch in. I call it I want a pony proposals that a lot of these cities do, and that where they'll say, we've approved to have broadband in our town. You, as a provider, will select you if you'll spend, $40 gajillion to keep our town built out. Okay, that's not enough. There has to be a public-private partnership with a lot of these communities if you want to move it faster. That's what I'm going to go. If you feel like you can work with MediaCom to get that objective done, I recommend you reach out to them. And it doesn't mean that MediaCom, even though, a lot of people perceive, and we take advantage of it, because Comcast and Cox do not take care of their customer the way we do. That's a fact. The data proves that.
Well, the MediaCom previously came to city council because they expanded their gigabit internet service, but I recently tried to get internet at my house, and I went through Frontier, and I signed up for 25 megs, and it's about $79 a month. And then you're giving a gigabyte, so a lot faster for about the same 40 cents. And then MediaCom, I dumped them because their price went up to $140 a month for 50 megs a month. And then, like you said, it's like you don't increase prices, and their prices go up $20 a month. And mine was a business pack or something, I think it was a little bit of a premium.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're offering is, Brandon figured out, like 40 to 20 times faster for the same amount of money.
Yeah, and we obviously have things that we do for individuals. If you're on the lunch program, we discount services, things of that nature. So we reach out in different ways because not everybody can pay for it. So some, people are taking gigabit internet now faster than they were 2 years ago. Right now, the last, half a year.
Service stack up against like 5G home internet.
So 5G that's a great question. 5G works in a couple different ways. 5G, there's two iterations of it coming. One is the one everybody kind of recognizes where you kind of have a lot of infrastructure in play, because 5G is kind of putting gigabit from a light post in a yard. I mean, it's really condensed. You have to have a lot of locations for 5G to have the coverage that it needs. So, therefore, you have to have a lot of density to make that effective for the carriers. So you see.
How does it stack up for speed?
Well, it's not there yet.
Okay.
But will it get there? Absolutely. The amount of money that's being dumped into it is pretty astronomical. But they are making a 5G to work with, like ours already fiber. They're also making a 5G to work over a cable system, which is called DOCSIS. That's really what will help a lot of cable companies out there, because 5G will not exist in a big rollout without using third-party companies to do it. So they'll reach out to the i3 broadbands of the world to put that infrastructure in. They'll reach out to the Comcast, Cox, and everybody else in between, because that's a ton of fiber infrastructure that have to be built. I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars to overbuild and make that happen. If they don't, the easiest way to do is partner with us and say, hey, I need a 10 gig connection to every lamp post in this neighborhood, all right, fine. For us, I don't care, I think it's a wonderful thing, because it's more infrastructure that we get to build. Because the one thing I can tell you, I took a photo last night.
Because that's the jobs that we are not, the $92,637 less than the Illinois average jobs that we're not having because of this.
Was there anything else? We should move on to the next topic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Were there any questions?
No, it's funny, this WTF, we use that in marketing, but it stands for wow, that's fast. Yeah. Yeah, this could go on, there are a lot of different ways to do it, but this takes, like you did before, you've got a lot of follow-on discussions. What you need to do is set what you want, a couple potential goals to be, and figure out how you want to drive the conversation to those. That's the simplest way to do it. You'll get a lot of folks step up and want to play in it. And I think you, from our relationships, from knowing a lot of folks in and around the state of Illinois, you will. If you decide, if you raise your hand and say, we want to do this in our community, you'll be rock stars, because everybody will want to help. And that's all it takes. It's surprising to do one press release on it, and you will get a lot of fanfare from it.
Jeff, you good?
Yeah, I'm on high speed, wound up, not ready to slow down and mellow out.
So Dan actually is going to be at our next council meeting as well on May 28th.
Correct.
March.
Yeah.
So he'll be able to, okay, so second on the agenda is.
You can stay, you can.
Sure.
I asked him if he wanted to. He said he was
Don't get excited, there's
No,
no
I've
free
been to
samples,
Denver
all I
before.
brought was coffee mugs, all right?
No, I love when I go to dinner.
They are campfire mugs. Me too.
Yeah.
Second on the agenda is cannabis, specifically recreational legislation and local opportunities economically. Illinois made cannabis medical in 2014, decriminalized in 2016, and doctors are able to prescribe in lieu of opiates last year, and this special study is talking about the next step. Jacksonville could decriminalize the exact wording of Illinois SB 7 after Pritzker signs, before the state implements the bill. This would be a proactive approach and an olive branch to expanding companies looking for a location. North Dakota just became the 25th state to decriminalize earlier this month. 1.5 ounces or 42 grams for anyone's first offense. Studies in recreational states have recently shown teen use of cannabis declined from 9.8% to 7.3% in 8th graders in Washington state as adult use stores started opening. Home values increased 8.4% within 1/10 of a mile of Colorado dispensaries. California's medical marijuana law reduced both violent and property crime by 20%. And I'd like to thank and introduce to the council the part owner of HCI, Chris Stone, and Christine Karhliker from the PR from HCI.
Yes.
And if I'm correct, you are now involved with a cultivation site as well.
In Barry?
And that Barry location was owned by Revolution,
Was?
and that site was lost to Barry in a bid from Jacksonville. So now the owner of the location is here to talk to us again about expanding. I'd like to listen. They will be talking about both cannabis, economy, and the plant itself. A couple questions to discuss are about the economy, keeping tax revenue in Jacksonville, jobs created by cultivators, dispensaries, and how do jobs adapt with users both medical and recreational. The reality of the cannabis expungement records, and with the plant, the reduction in opioid deaths, home grows benefits and consequences, the percent of THC in your products, why you don't worry about low quality flower. And recreational and medical cannabis differences, what's the difference between what would be recreational cannabis if SB 7 passes and medical cannabis, and anything about legal CBD derivatives. And I'll just start off by throwing a myth out there first to ask, is 60s weed versus now stronger or weaker? And maybe you can talk about land-race strains that have been around for not only hundreds of years, but thousands of years, and not 1960, but 80, but 1960 BC. So I'll let the experts take it from here. Thank you very much.
So my area is definitely gonna be community outreach, the products, the strains, and I can tell you, answering questions about our patients and where we were when we opened from there. And of course, Chris Stone is also a lobbyist and our CEO and created this company and brought me on board almost 4 years ago. Anything legislative, he's definitely the expert. I did bring some education packets, just referral material.
Here, I'll pass it
And
on.
thank you, and it's even got, it's got a package, I focus more on the customer, and so I will do anything to answer any questions you have, nothing's off the table here, but I've also got this educational booklet, because we do try to provide education to the customers that we serve. It's got a lot of good information in there. I might can hit the strain information for you, Brandon, the things you talked about, the 1960s, quote unquote, weed to now. Yeah, when you look back historically, it used to be if it was 7% THC, that was a high number back then. And we've got product in our stores that are testing in Illinois at 31% THC. It's highly regulated, highly tested, pure, clean, molds, everything in there is tested and has, you know, regulatory compliance. It's gotta meet to be sold to patients. I do wanna start by saying how I got into this business, because I'm not a pot person from the 80s or anything like that. Actually, I think when it went legal in Colorado, I was like, oh, they're gonna fall off and go to heck and fall into the ocean and burn, because these are really bad drug people.
Could you expand on how
Yeah.
Denver decriminalized
Yeah.
cannabis first, and then they saw the economic boom from cannabis, and then the state followed, and now everybody's getting refund checks from the surplus of
Well,
taxes
that's
from
true.
Colorado?
And as far as that, you might be better at that, although I visited as just someone spying on, to learn about the industry before I came on here. My background is compliance and regulatory for Department of Homeland Security, 13 years. And I always wanted to work for Chris Stone, and when the cannabis opportunity came up to open a dispensary, after something that happened 8 years ago with my dad with cancer, retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, was asking me in Florida to find him some cannabis, and I was like, how could you do such a thing? But it led to education and research, and I came on. I did go to Colorado to see what is this like, and I thought I was gonna be walking into head shops and things, and he took me out there. Went in there, and it was a lot like what we do here. Some of them feel very much like, you know, a medical spa, 'cause they've got the medical side, like a pharmacist spa type, and they have all the products and the labels. What I did see is, from just visiting Colorado, some of our kids go out there skiing from 10, 15 years ago to now. I thought it was gonna be a dirty little town, and it's quite upgraded from the street signs that are fancy or anything I've ever seen. Just the infrastructure's really clean. You can probably talk to the legislative and business side, because you're the businessman that way, but what I've seen is clean, nothing I'd be ashamed to work around. In the industry as it is right now here in Illinois, we've got Springfield and Collinsville. I was a manager that hired everyone when we opened. We opened our doors to 29 registered patients in Springfield, and we have over 1,000 registered with us in Springfield right now. So I've watched the growth, watched the people, and while I came there for retail, something new, to be local, not travel, and the compliance side of it, I fell in love with the customer. And that's why I do what I do today. I didn't really know if I believed in the medicine. I didn't think I would want to walk into a vault that smelled like cannabis, and now I'm like, I smell that terpene, I can smell that myrcene, and I can smell the limonene, and I can tell the different strains. But your sour diesel and your Maui Wowies from the 60s and 70s, yes, they're still here today, and you mentioned landrace strains. With a lot of the interbreeding, there's very few Landrace strains left. We do have some in Illinois. Most of them are hybrids. They've been inbred to get your CBD, to get your THC, your THCA, your THCV. We have people come in and want an appetite suppressant, so they're asking for that specific cannabinoid. And that's what our
This will be
products are.
available for medical and recreational.
It will. Illinois was the 20th state, and it was the most highly regulated state to pass. And now we've got 43 states that are legal in some form. Many of them have used Illinois to model after. It came pretty fast after us. The next 23 came along. We've done tours, the way we built our business, and we're in the capital city, IDFPR, when other legislative groups want to see how a dispensary runs, and they've got it on their legislative docket. Governor Kasich's office in Ohio, they have one of the highest opioid death rates. So they were looking at this 2 years ago, and their legislative group toured our dispensary just to get an idea of what it's like. And everyone that walks in is surprised. I didn't know it would be like this when they see the product and how we handle the patients and who our clients are. I was surprised at who our clients are. And this may surprise everybody, but right now, and I know things change in businesses, but when you run the numbers, the person who walks in my door today, more than 50% of them do not have a cannabis use background. They're looking for an alternative choice because nothing else was working. Also, more than 50% of them are over age 50. Right now, this month, I'm your average customer, single, white female, no, I'm married, I'm just kidding. But a white female, 52 years old with no cannabis background. And so they're coming in and
It's becoming way more mainstream.
the stigma from 3 years ago to now has changed, and it's purely with education on my part, on the patient's part, and just learning from each other and what's out there. So now we fast forward, we've had medical that's proven successful. Probably the most unsuccessful thing is the way it's designed is a lot of people with a qualifying condition still can't get their doctor to certify. It's not a prescription. It is a certification where all the doctor would do would acknowledge, you have cancer, let me acknowledge it to the state so you can participate. We still today, if I see 6 people today, 3 of them can't get their doctor to sign a non-prescriptive acknowledgement to the state of Illinois that you do have cancer, you do have MS. So they're not qualifying. So where we're seeing a lot of support for adult legal access is people thinking, I won't have to go to my doctor, I would have access anyway. And while it does pass the way it's written now, there are additional conditions that are gonna be on there, because a lot of people that don't support legal will say, we'll just add more conditions. Well, there are some more on there, but it's still not a full docket. I can speak personally from what I've witnessed with people and the research I've done. One of my conditions is not on there, and it's not slated to be. I would look forward to it, and no, I don't want to smoke baby lotion, but that would be my choice for what I've learned that I would want to use. So making it legal, besides regulating it and taxing it, will give people who don't have access now, that are educating themselves, hearing about it, doing the research, that want to come in and don't have access, they would have legal access.
Did you see an increase from your business when PTSD became legal, and then also when the doctors were able to prescribe opiates in lieu of,
Yeah.
cannabis in lieu of opiates?
Yes to both, but something else has happened here with the opioids. So PTSD right now, if you run statistics and on the Illinois Department of Public Health site, they do have records and data that they post regularly. I think they'll update it again in June or July. Right now, the #1 condition is PTSD. And that just opened the door for so many. And once you had too, people with a lot of chronic conditions or chronic pain end up with PTSD symptoms from suffering from that for so long. Had chronic pain went on there, it probably would have blown the industry wide open, but we saw a big jump. #1 right now of the 40 conditions plus terminal illness is PTSD. #2, severe fibromyalgia. #3 is cancer. So those are the top 3 of the 40 conditions that come through our door. I also get excited because terminal illness is issued a 6-month card, and I help people quite often renew to a regular card because they're still here when their terminal card has expired.
That's awesome.
Yes, yeah. So, but PTSD opened the door for a lot. And then I think there was a second part to that I didn't answer.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Last-
so
last-
we did have a lot of attention to it. I think it brought a lot more people looking, do I qualify? So while we haven't had, the doctor has to be on board, it's not a prescription still, it's a recommendation. but they have to do it online. And some doctors writing that opioid prescription, a couple things I've seen, and I get this feedback from patients, no official poll I've done, is the doctor won't take the time. They think it's gonna take them an hour of their time and they're not gonna mess with something online. But once they register for about 15 minutes, it's a 10-minute process, and they would renew it every 90 days like they would the prescription. But what we have found is people that are being prescribed opioids talk to their doctor about it. We also are finding more of them have requested cannabis, and we find out they've got a qualifying permission. And it's less work for them sometimes just to get a 1, 2, or 3 year card than try to renew every 90 days. And then the next thing I see a lot of is the doctors, some of them will tell them, okay, if I do this, you're not gonna get that prescription anymore. And they're terrified to stop cold turkey. But I mean, I belong to a lot of secret and private groups on social media that are full of patients. One's got over 16,000 in it. And I watch their stories to learn from them. And you'll see someone that say, hey, I got my card for PTSD, but I was on opioids and I'm not on this medicine, this medicine, this medicine, this medicine. And it also helped with this. So when you talk about the science of the plant, you've got a plant with all these phytocannabinoids, it's full of cannabinoids. They were discovered by Israeli scientists in 1988, which is what led to discovering in 1996, and doctors will tell you, yes, you have an endocannabinoid system, they match and they work together. So these people have access to this, they're researching it, and they're finding out, hey, my doctor won't do the opioid, but they'll qualify me this way now, because they don't wanna go online and do it. So this is my eyes, what I've seen since February. It did open some floodgates. We probably have 20 to 30 new patients a week register. Sometimes more, sometimes less each week. This is what's going on, and that's a big jump before opioid had passed. So it brought a lot of attention to it.
Is the doctor not doing the online registration any kind of violation of his Hippocratic oath to help the patient first?
I don't know. I've questioned a doctor's Hippocratic oath that if I have cancer, why won't you sign a piece of paper that is all it's saying is that I have cancer and let me make a choice, you know, what I'm putting into my body. So I haven't seen that brought to the table, have you?
I know.
Okay, I haven't yet. I keep waiting to read about it because I searched for it. So I do know when it first came out, Memorial is so big in Springfield. My daughter happens to be the associate chief counsel there, and they would not participate the first 6 months in the program, and it had to do with the legal language, even though it wasn't a prescription, a few words on how it read on the doctor's certification, and they changed that, and then they lifted their ban. And so even a year after it started, it was the next January, we opened in February 2016, by January 2017, Memorial lifted their ban. And so people say, my doctor at Memorial doesn't sign. Well, they do, because I can pull up a list of 50 doctors that do. But I think they're responsible doctors that don't just sign because you want cannabis. They're treating a patient, they have a bona fide doctor-patient relationship, and they're okay with acknowledging the condition because they understand the paperwork now, so.
How many medical cannabis patients are there in Illinois right now?
Is it 60?
I read about 61,000.
Yeah.
I keep track of this because actually I was one of the first few thousand in Illinois to be a patient. I have at least 3 qualifying conditions. And HCI is great. They have a very professional building. Everybody's very nice and kind, and they help you if you have a certain problem. They try and help you with that certain problem. It's a great place.
Thank you.
We have 61,000 plus in the state of Illinois, of which 73% of them are unique patients. That means 27% of the patients that are getting a card are either not purchasing at a store, have not purchased within the last year, maybe taking that card and still buying on the black market, or using the card for other purposes, we don't know. But you have roughly, I'll ballpark it, say you have roughly about 40 to 45,000 unique patients currently in the state. The program is 3.5 years old, started in November of 2015, give or take. And many roadblocks over the course of the last 4 years to allow patients to get registered, and the timing of how they get registered. It used to be up until the new administration that it would take somewhere between 75 and 100 days in order to get all the paperwork done and actually get your card in order to purchase the product. some people would go through the process and they would pass away before they would get the card. The new administration, with the implementation of the opioid substitute legislation, the former administration and the new administration decided, hey, listen, this is too cumbersome, so we're going to expedite this and allow for patients to go see a bona fide, or have a bona fide relationship with a doctor, get that signed, and then be able to do the registration online. Like Christy said, it takes about 15 minutes, and the very next day you can actually go and buy your product. You don't have to wait the 75 to 90 to 100 days now, which is great, and it's helped out a lot of patients in order to be able to access the product.
That's amazing that there are patients out there that have lasted longer than what the doctor thought they would.
Listen, we have great stories about patients that were stage 4 cancer and ended up having their cancer go into remission, and simply by going on a cannabis protocol. And so they're completely cancer-free just by doing that. The stories will, they'll give you goosebumps, they'll give you a warm fuzzy in your heart, and it's not just 1 or 20 or 50, it's hundreds and hundreds of patients that come to our facilities both in Collinsville and Springfield, and we hear these wonderful stories, and then you go, okay, you know what, there's obviously something to this in terms of the benefits for pain and other ailments that may be ailing people.
That's the pros of it, and I understand the dispensary, but what are we looking at for our town? We want to put a dispensary here, and so it sounds like Brandon's looking for, what do we need to provide you? Or, I mean, can you just come in and put a dispensary? Can we?
You can't right now.
Yeah.
You have to wait for the legislation to go through on the recreational side. I believe that the state will allow for dispensaries to be, new dispensary licenses to be issued in certain rounds. The first couple rounds will not be necessarily based on I'll call it a demand study and needs assessment. But the future rounds after that will probably be done on a demand study / needs assessment to make sure that this isn't Colorado, California, Washington, where there's a dispensary on every corner. You don't want to do that for a couple reasons. One, because obviously the towns would get inundated potentially with dispensaries. Two, for the current and potentially future dispensary owners, you'd be devaluing and cannibalizing their patient base or their customer base and the license itself. So I do think that they're going to do something that's going to be equitable, not only for everybody wanting to operate a dispensary in Chicago or the suburbs, but be able to regionalize it so that there's going to be a good geographic dispersion of the dispensary licenses, just like they did the medical program. What does that mean to Jacksonville? I think that locating a dispensary here is a no-brainer. There could be a situation where they issue a craft grow license, which allows for a smaller cultivation center to be located here to be able to make additional hybrid strains that could be sold out into the marketplace. That could also be a possibility. And you know what, I mean, listen, we have a facility that is 25 minutes away, maybe less from here. The amount of jobs that could be, coming from that facility where people are living in Jacksonville or Quincy, which is kind of, I'll call it somewhat equidistant with Barry. There could be definitely job possibilities for some of the citizens of Jacksonville to be able to work there. If we build out our facility to the max capacity that we are looking to do, you could be talking about 400 plus jobs at that one facility.
So you wouldn't be talking about locating, you can't build another facility like a Berry facility here unless you get the craft license.
Well, and it's interesting, they will allow for additional full cultivation licenses as well, but that's gonna be done on a needs assessment basis. And I'm not sure that you're gonna see a cultivation center here within the next 3 years, because the original applications that we submitted for cultivation required you to be able to show how you were gonna expand your facility. And most of those expansion plans allow for one, the expansion of 18 cultivation centers, or actually it's 20, but 2 of them aren't necessarily really running and up and running yet. But it allows for them to expand to the point where they'll be able to at least meet demand for the next 3 to 4 years in their expansion plans.
'Cause I think that's a big thing, is to meet the demand.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and these are to be done on demand studies and demand assessments, so that you're not inundated with, situations where, two great examples. Oklahoma implemented medical marijuana. They have 5,400 licenses for a state of 3.5 million people. They have 1,500 dispensaries. They have 2,900 grow facilities that have been licensed for 3.5 million people. We have 55 dispensaries for 12.8 million people, and we have 18 grow facilities for 12.8 million people.
Running at what, 25% they've been, are the grow facilities? None of them have been at full capacity.
Well, they're at full capacity now, but I mean,
Yeah.
they'll continue to grow, and so,
I'd like to add to that, you laugh about Oklahoma, but Oregon is just looking at passing a export of cannabis. So if you have a place like Oklahoma that's just the exporter of it, then that's where all the money is gonna go, correct?
potentially, but understand, in the exporting deal, you end up getting to federal legal issues between interstate commerce.
Between the states.
And states like to protect their own, so I could see that lots of states will not allow for the importation of Oregon oil, essentially.
Terrifying.
But they, I just don't think that will happen. I mean, most of the states, if not all, will not allow for Oregon to ship their oil into their state. And it's an integrity issue on the product itself. The testing situation in Oregon is a lot different than Illinois. The regulatory aspects of Illinois' program is a lot different than Oregon. We really did, and listen, I get it, the state doesn't do too many things right, to be quite honest with you. But when it developed this program, except for the access to patients, they did a really, really good job, to the point where there are 8 states that have modeled their programs after Illinois in order to develop a program that works.
And I heard the product is one of the cleanest products as far as what you were talking about, the microbiological and any impurities that are in the product. So Illinois has the highest quality of medical cannabis.
Highest quality
in
product,
the nation.
definitely medical grade, highest potency based on the science that has been working in each of these facilities. And the interesting thing is some people take that as an offense, that we're making high potency product. But the concept is, if you make high potency product, you need less of it, which means it lasts longer. The whole concept is, listen, no matter whether it's alcohol, any type of drug, food for that matter, you tend to want to try to make sure that people are eating or drinking or consuming products in moderation. And that's the intent with respect to the high potency product. And I mean, I think patients can probably attest to the idea that if you are a first-time patient, we always recommend, please start slow. It's very, very potent. It can knock you on your butt.
On the back also of all the bottles and everything they have all the percentages, you know exactly what you're getting. It tells you that it's been checked and by the labs and all that. It's very clean, it's very good, it's not shady. And honestly, if this does pass, why shouldn't we try and get some money off of it? Why shouldn't we try and bring it here? Because if it's gonna pass, whether we like it or not.
well, you said the keyword, we're not here to pass the law.
Well, I mean, no, I'm saying if it does, yeah, we should
What do
jump
we
on
need
the
to be
boat.
on board to
Yeah.
look at anything, and you just kind of answered my question, what we need to be looking for, so that's if we're gonna benefit from.
Those are the things that I would look for. Understand too, that the city would make some money off of that. There's obviously an excise tax that would be applied to that, which the city would get roughly the way that it's drawn on now. Keep in mind, it hasn't passed, and it might change a little bit. But they're looking at 4% per transaction, whatever that transaction number is. I can tell you our average transaction number has actually ticked up here in the last couple months. So the average transaction number is probably somewhere around $180 per transaction.
I'm sad that Jacksonville's partner in the round, and the company that you bought, beat out our company in the process. So, I mean, we can use those 400 jobs here, and we have more workforce than Barry, and I think we have a better infrastructure than Barry.
You might,
So-
but exactly.
Yeah. So,
Although they're very good partners, they're very good partners.
oh, sure, they're great,
So-
but I think Jacksonville could do better. But, so what do we need to do to get a facility, a grow facility, a crafts grow facility, or to like invite a company in like you to locate here? Is there anything you need from us, or? Because
Or they just wait for.
That was my
Yeah.
question, Steve.
Yeah, because we help, I mean, we worked in the first round, and we were partners with someone, and they didn't get it, but we'd love to have that job opportunities here.
I definitely think maybe a little bit of marketing might be, and maybe, listen, at the end of the day, we're looking for real estate, right? Especially even if the craft grow, I mean, cultivation is, full cultivation is maybe a little bit different in terms of what you're looking for property wise. But the idea of being able to have, available property that qualifies.
Are you talking about greenhouse or out, farmland or what?
It could be both. I mean, understand that there's all sorts of variations on how you can grow this, according to the Department of Ag. So it could be greenhouse, it could be fully enclosed. There is a provision that allows for you to be outdoor but enclosed. I mean, it still has to be very secure. The outdoor program would be probably high CBD, very low THC. Just because of the climate, you only get a couple harvests versus having 4 to 5 harvests a year indoor.
How many acres are you talking about? Like, so-
We have 20 acres in Barry.
Like 10, didn't you?
And we have the initial 10, we've got an option for another 10. That initial 10 will allow for us to be at somewhere around 225,000 square feet. We are gonna build a high CBD, low THC 2-acre area on the additional 10 acres with the possibility of growing even bigger. We are required to be at that spot. We can locate elsewhere, we can move, but the problem is that because we've got so much invested there, it's gonna be very hard for us to move. And keep in mind, there is an investment there of $26 million. At the end of the day, that'll be $26 million facility.
the land you need, is that in the city or is that out in the country? Like, what kind of land do you need?
That land was actually annexed into Barry.
Okay.
I don't believe it was when we originally had it, but it was annexed into Barry. So, and you guys can decide whether or not you want to annex it or not. But there's gonna be potential for that in the future. Even if it's small, you want to try to locate something that's manufactured. Exactly.
So, there we go, and I got a feeling you're gonna meet the demand.
Yes.
Okay,
Listen,
thank you.
I'm not
There
gonna
you
lie,
go.
but we're gonna be able to meet the demand, but here's the thing. Understand that there's probably gonna be somewhere around 150 craft grows. So if you had 150 craft grows to 18 current cultivators and 20 at the end of the day, I got a feeling that we're gonna be able to meet the demand for at least the next 5 years moving forward. So that's why I say, definitely look to attract a craft grow.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that you can't locate multiple craft grows here. And keep in mind, those craft grows, the way that we have the legislation written, it starts off at 5,000 square feet, and it goes to 14,000 square feet of canopy, which means you're probably looking at a 20 to 25,000 square foot facility for each of those.
And so then what we need to do is work with our city planner on looking at where these facilities could be located as far as small craft, dispensary, cultivation sites, and have that planned out and ready for facilities like your own to come and look at what we have available, and then just look at what Jacksonville has and whether or not you want to locate here, which you already said is a no-brainer for a dispensary, but what about cultivation sites and
Yeah,
in the small crafts?
You need to be thinking about property, you need to think about water for the manufacturing side. You need to be thinking about electricity. You need to be thinking about broadband.
Thank you.
Damn, just listen.
Really? You
I'm a
have to
show.
throw that out there?
Hey, listen, I'm a
Thank
show
you.
this deal.
Thank you. Thank you.
But you need all,
Good
listen, you need all of these things in order to be able to do it right. Understand, there's a big reason why we have fiber, okay, so we have black fiber running into our facility at Springfield, okay? And that's a big deal because we didn't have to.
Where you get that from?
Huh?
Where you get that from?
We need it because of the requirement by the state on the facial recognition storage capacity that we need. We need 90 days, which is 3 times the amount that the Department of Corrections facility needs, okay? 10 frames per second, it takes a lot of storage. The storage alone for both of our facilities, dispensaries, keep in mind, was close to $300,000, okay? The storage capacity that we have at Barry is running, I mean, it costs us about $600,000 just for the actual storage to be able to store all that and to make sure that we have the proper bandwidth to be able to run it and store it within the camera systems. We have 58 cameras at our facility in Springfield. We have 102, I believe, in Barry, and that's gonna continue to grow. So it kind of gives you an understanding of how complicated these systems are, how much infrastructure you do need, and why it's important.
And these are the data processing, hosting, related service of jobs that you're talking about, that we are so far behind here on the I-72 corridor.
I didn't plan this, by the way.
No, one of the things that we're getting requests.
You gotta get together later.
I do have, but we're getting questions, or we're getting requests for 100 gig circuits like businesses. So you kind of fit into that.
Oh, yeah.
We do storage and infrastructure all throughout the
Oh, yeah,
state.
it's a big deal. I mean,
So-
data warehouse storage is, I mean, it doesn't create a huge amount of jobs, but the amount of facilities that you need in order to be able to do it. I mean, if you're looking for something else to think about doing and locating, it's locating those if you can get some of that stuff here, because it's gonna be a huge requirement for all sorts of businesses.
What we do for our camera storage is unreal. One of our guys is trained in the best.
Oh,
We gotta
okay.
download everything.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Our storage is unreal.
It's
Easy,
crazy.
you gotta do that real time.
Huh? Okay,
That's not, yeah, we,
you got a new guy there, Jerry Costello.
Yes.
He's
I've been
great.
dealing with it the last couple days.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Tell him Chris Stone said it.
Oh,
The JREDC had on their priorities that broadband was number 2, the prioritization of the regional plan objectives, work with local broadband providers to offer high-speed broadband capacity to residents and businesses in rural areas of the region. If you are looking to relocate and the area does not have broadband, is that something that you would definitely pass by? And if it did have 100 gigabit service already ready out to the park, wherever you needed it to, is that something, how high on the list would that be as an attraction to a business like yours?
It's almost a requirement for our businesses.
sounds like it. I mean, legally wise, you're gonna have to have it for the
Yep.
state, so you have to have something with the state.
You're gonna be, yeah, I mean, and you're gonna be looking at that, you're gonna be looking at, making sure that you have, electrical capacity, especially on the manufacturing side, because you're running high voltage, lights, okay? I mean, we spend, even in the facility isn't even, at full capacity yet, and we're spending probably $26,000 a month on electricity.
We got you covered. We put you at the industrial park where by the correctional facility. You got security on one side. I'll give you a little extra there, you know?
Hey, listen, you know what, our dispensary council is located right next to the state police,
Yeah.
so, you know what?
Headquarters,
Yeah,
that's
it's great.
I've got one question for you, all the qualified.
Dan, you're not allowed to ask me questions, I already, hey,
I'm
get-
gonna-
He asked you one.
You just didn't answer, so.
so.
All the qualified conditions, the state votes on that? How did they get on there?
They were done by legislation, all of them.
Okay.
And there is a mechanism by which to add them,
Mm-hmm.
but the state hasn't been very good at directing the Department of Public Health to add them like they should have.
I was thinking a lot of other states, this is a bigger list.
There's 10 out there that are still, well, technically 12 that are under consideration, that are actually in appeals right now to be added.
Gotcha.
The Department of Public Health can add them, but because politics are being held up.
Gotcha.
So one of them's chronic, well, actually 5 of the 12 are essentially chronic pain. So,
So with the legislation itself and the SB 7 going through the House right now, I don't know what is going to happen with it, but if it's accepted by the state house and Pritzker signs it, would the city decriminalizing SB 7 be an olive branch to other owners of dispensaries like you? I have also invited Chris Weldrick from Herbal Remedies to be at our next city council, and then Normal will be speaking there, and Jeff Cox from the Department of Agriculture I invited, but because this was a recreational study, the department was unable to be here because of the conflict of interest with the legislation still pending. So I would suggest that any legislation made by the council wait until after we hear from the state, the Department of Agriculture. Jeff Cox. I know he's worked with a lot of legislatures, and he would best be able to explain how the implementation of SB 7 would be done, and also the hemp legislation from the Farm Bill from legalization from last year was why I originally invited him, because our agricultural area around here is big with farms. So having the U of I Extension inviting the farmers here, hopefully to all meet up when Jeff comes to talk about the hemp, as maybe hopefully the recreational cannabis is legalized, is the city being proactive by taking that legislation and just basically decriminalizing it until it's enacted in January 1st of 2020. Would that be the olive branch that would attract places like, I spoke with Rick Nixick from Greenhouse of Chicago and Litchfield, and he was a veteran that did not participate in cannabis, but was in the business because that's what he knew helped people. And he was going to come and speak on the 10th with everybody. So there are dispensaries coming here to look at what we're doing, and if we make the right choices with the legislation, would that be something that would attract these businesses to our town from your standpoint?
One, I don't know if you have a ordinance in place on medical cannabis. If you do, it's great.
It's the state.
Huh?
It's the state just, yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, it would be a good idea to put in I would say a cannabis ordinance. You're gonna probably have to do that anyway. It's not necessarily an opt-in, you don't have to opt in, there's gonna be obviously communities that opt out, but it would be a good sign to essentially have like the ordinance that, says that you're opting in and want to be able to attract businesses.
Is there any model legislation you can give us?
There will be model legislation actually put out by the IML after Senate Bill 7 passes. I would suggest that, take a look at it. You're gonna probably want to make a few modifications, as most municipalities want to do based on the way that their ordinance structure is set up. Understand that there's a 1,500-foot setback between dispensary rule that will be in place there. There will not be the same type of setbacks on cultivation that there were in the medical program, 2,500 feet setbacks from daycares, primarily zoned residential, schools, which eliminates a lot of locations. Those won't be in there, but you may want to maybe put in your own setbacks in order to be able to position it in a place that you'd rather see it than not. So it's just something, something to think about as you're thinking about those ordinance. And timing wise, expect that this bill, if it passes, will be the 30th or 31st of May. Understand that he probably signs it sometime before July 1st. And yes, you're talking about January 1st as a start date for potential sales recreationally. So I'd be saying sometime between, I'll call it July 1st and maybe the end of November, you may want to be thinking about putting this ordinance in place in order to be able to accommodate for not just the recreational sales, but also the licensing timelines that are going to be in place with respect to this bill. The first set of timelines is going to be craft grows and dispensaries, and I think that currently, although this may change a little bit, right now they've got it as the application fill out March 31st, with the selection being July, it's either July 31st or July 1st of 2020. And then you could find yourself in a situation where cultivation or dispensary licenses may want to be looking at the location here in Jacksonville. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and so what?
Trying to keep it condensed, but I am.
No, I actually have a personal appointment with the city's attorney tomorrow over this exact discussion, and what should I specifically ask him that Jacksonville could enact?
Nothing yet. Let's wait till Senate Bill 7 passes. And then from there, I think that, if you have an ordinance in place now, you can probably model it off the current ordinance that you have, unless you're just, simply it just says revert back to the state. You can look at the city of Springfield's one, because they actually reverted back to the state, but they actually put it all in writing. So you could simply just copy and paste that and tweak it for how your ordinance structure is set up here and where you might want to put it or not put it in terms of allowances for craft grows and dispensaries.
We had something until they changed the amount, and then we just basically reversed the state.
And that's when we redid our ordinances, we kind of did the whole revert the state, so repeating language, because language of the state might change, and we don't have to update our ordinance program.
The state changed it, so it was.
Yeah, and you may wanna, you may wanna just take a look at it, because, some locations in the city, you may wanna have it, some you don't. So, especially if it's manufacturing versus retail, so.
But you said definitely a dispensary's a no-brainer. Possibly 400 jobs for a facility, a cultivation site would be something beneficial for Jacksonville. And any other small craft grows would just help the local economy that much more.
And I think that a craft grow of that size, you're probably talking about somewhere between 9 to 12 people initially. As it grows to, 20, 25,000 square feet, you could be talking about, I'll ballpark it somewhere between 20 and 25 at the end of the day. But think about Barry. I would take a guess. Yes, we have some local Barry folks there, but I would say now where we had mostly Barry folk, we actually have more Jacksonville and Quincy people than we do Barry's there now, yeah. Maybe 1 or 2 from Pittsfield, but I think most of them are actually from Jacksonville or Quincy.
We have a Jacksonville player dispensary in Springfield.
Yeah, we do.
And that goes along with the prioritization of regional plan objectives that our Economic Development Corporation came out. I said number 2 was broadband, and number 3 is develop an entrepreneurial development center that could include business incubators, co-working space, maker space, entrepreneurial resource center. So all these are aimed at the number 3, the small craft.
Take a look at Senate Bill 7 in the incubator portion. For cultivators, they are probably going to require part of the licensing structure is going to go into an incubator grant program, where the state will actually give incubators that are set up to be able to work on the science of cannabis and business development. They will give them grants to be able to set them up and to be able to help operate. I would, if I'm right about the number of dispensaries in cultivation that will get recreational licenses, there will probably be somewhere in the vicinity of 2 to 3 million in that pot to be able to help create and operate incubators. So that's maybe another item that you might want to think about doing, is create a small incubator that will allow for businesses to want to start up there on the entrepreneurial side, but also be able to have, potentially people from Barry, Herbal Remedies, HCI, be able to come in and mentor those businesses in the cannabis industry.
So is there anything else on this topic? There's lots of stuff we need to talk more.
I don't think so.
Broadband and cannabis.
I really appreciate everybody's time here.
Is there anybody have any public input?
Okay.
Was there any more myths that need dispelled or anything? I know I've heard
Any public input from anyone?
a lot of stuff that was kind of crazy about cannabis, but.
Who's part of the public? I mean, I know we all voice our opinion.
Reporters.
He's over.
In public,
Thank you.
in public.
Okay.
I just find, again, sergeant, that's for me.